What's up, guys? I'm DEEPCUT, your YouTube. Welcome back to Cartoon Universe. Today, we are going to be ranking the top 10 episodes of Steven Universe Future so far. This started as a joke, because there's literally only 10 episodes out, but we figured it would be fun to make everyone fight in the comments over which episodes are the best, so I look forward to joining that war in the comments section. Let's jump into it. At the very bottom of this list is, of course, my least favorite episode, Why So Blue? To a lot of people, this may seem unfair. In a previous video of mine, I talked about why the opinions on the episode were rather mixed, and even pointed out a lot of the things the episode did well, and there really were a lot of them. If you ignore the issues with expectations and timing, it really is a good episode. And that should tell you how much I am enjoying Steven Universe Future so far. Unlike Season 4 and 5, which I felt were bloated with underwhelming and unimportant episodes, this new series isn't held back by the need to push the plot towards a big endgame, at least not yet. This episode, while entirely standalone, has a great premise, compelling character drama, cool world building, beautiful music, fun action, and builds upon an already very well-established character. The most impressive thing to me was that they were able to show a character who had completed their initial arc and highlight that it doesn't mean they get a happy ending. And that really is the point of this epilogue series as a whole, that you don't just get to live a happily ever after. Working through your problems means continuing to work through them for the rest of your life. And now it's time for Steven to start working through his. Number 9, we have Prickly Pear. This episode was really promising in the beginning, because it was a follow-up to the episode Little Graduation, and started off really strong. Steven has been sad about all of his friends moving on, and began growing plants that he named after his friends in order to feel like he's keeping them close to him. From there, it transitioned into Steven's issues as a whole, however, and it really lost my interest in doing that. Don't get me wrong, it was a okay episode, even better than Why So Blue as this list suggests, but it felt like a chance to move towards closure on one specific issue Steven is having, people moving on, as opposed to just adding that problem to the large pile of problems that Steven is dealing with. All in all, it was fun, but this cactus monster was much less threatening than his appearance in the opening theme would have suggested. Number 8, Rosebuds. Rosebuds was hard for me to place on this list. It is simultaneously really amazing, but also kind of awkward. One thing that was great was that we finally got closure on the rose quartzes that were bubbled at the human zoo, and what that meant for the bigger story. Unfortunately, that answer was really underwhelming in my opinion. The rose quartz's personalities were really fun, and I would love to see them around in future episodes as well, and the drama they brought was serious enough to balance out those quirky personality traits, but it felt like the resolution to the story was a bit too fast. All in all, I just have very mixed opinions about this one. It could have been absolutely epic, but it certainly wasn't disappointing to me in any particular way either. Number 7, Bluebird. This episode told its story perfectly. It was small, yet it still played into the bigger picture. The action was a lot of fun to watch, and despite being on the serious side, it was also rather funny. Watching Amethyst break down because Steven accidentally insulted her artwork of him was the highlight of the season in my opinion. And at the end of the day, the episode was nothing particularly special, but it was fun and moved the plot along, which is what every episode should aim to be at the very least. Number 6, Guidance. This episode was exactly the lighthearted start the series needed, especially after Little Homeschool got rather intense. It was essentially a second pilot to the epilogue series, reminding us of what the real problem is. Steven is losing his edge and trying too hard to help others, even though they don't really need his help anymore. It's amazing to see Amethyst finally find herself. She's no longer just lazing about without a purpose, but rather has found a way to laze about with a purpose. My favorite part was just seeing all the various gems and their shenanigans at their new jobs. Nothing will ever be more funny than seeing a ruby in a bonnet handing comatose townies flowers and then stealing their money before running away on fire. Plus, Smoky Quartz returned, my favorite fusion. Number 5, Snowday. The synopsis for this episode was very misleading, as it seemed to indicate that we would be seeing flashbacks of what all the main crystal gems have been up to in the last few years. And while that would have been amazing, instead, we got an amazing game of Steven tag that managed to carry some emotional weight to it as well. I think we can all relate to Steven here to some degree. I remember being a teenager and my mother trying to force me to come play in the rain with her, and along the way, you do end up getting involved and having fun, even if you drag your feet. But it doesn't change the fact that someone was ignoring your desires not to be involved with this to begin with. It also gave you cozy feelings, reminding me of when I was much younger and we'd have snow days and miss school. These days felt like they had no rules. Being snowed in really does just make people do crazy things. All in all, it was a really fun episode. The character drama was just the right size for the 11-minute time limit, and yet it felt like it could have been even more if they had given it a full half hour. Number 4, Little Homeschool. No one really knew what to expect when we got this episode, as it was the beginning of the entire series. It could have been light, it could have been serious, but instead it managed to give us something in the middle. The fight scene was a little too anime. It lacked the grace of early season fight scenes, like when Pearl fought Amethyst back in the kindergarten in the episode On the Run. But it is still perhaps the second greatest fight scene in the entire series after that one. It was everything a pilot needs to be. It was fun, yet it managed to be serious. They were able to bring back fan-favorite characters in a way that addressed their unresolved issues without wrapping them up, and successfully launched Steven on his own personal journey for the season. Assuming that these two characters get to cross paths again in a way that concludes their story, it is a very amazing beginning. Number 3, a very special episode. Hailey actually had to convince me not to make this number 1 on this list, because I absolutely love it. A lot of people are divided on it, particularly on the character of Sunstone, and I get it. When she first appeared, she nearly ruined the show for me, with her scenes in Change Your Mind really bringing down what was an otherwise epic climax to the story. But it's hard for me not to appreciate her for what she is, a hilarious PSA parody. While it is unfortunate that this fusion can't be used more seriously in the story, it is still fun to see her doing all the things I remember from children's public safety announcements back in the 90s. This is on par with Uncle Grandpa to me, and something most people hate, but I love them as a special treat that you get here and there, as long as it stays non-canon. As far as enjoyability goes, it is one of my favorite things I have ever seen, but it probably would have worked better as an online parody of Steven Universe than an actual episode from the show. Number 2, Volleyball. Now objectively, this really should be the number 1 spot on this list. It is the most well put together episode of the entire series so far. It manages to put closure on an earlier plot point and character, but it uses that as a way to push forward the current plot and Steven's struggle with his internal issues. It reminded me of the more powerful episodes from way back in Season 1, like a combination of Giant Woman and Rosa Scabbard. The emotional intensity of these pearls coming together, paired with the elegance of their escape, made it a nearly perfect episode in my opinion, and it got even better when I rewatched it. Finally, my favorite episode thus far, number 1 on this list, Little Graduation. As I said before, Volleyball is objectively a better episode overall, but this one really resonated with me personally, and probably for a lot of other people as well. I went to 5 different high schools growing up, but no matter how many times I moved, I never started to feel better about the fact that everyone was moving on and doing new things, and no longer being a big part of each other's lives. The episode tried to end on a happy note about people still being connected despite moving on, but it felt a bit hollow to me, and to some degree I do think that was intentional. This season hasn't seen Steven actually resolve any issues about himself, but instead keeps adding them to a bigger and bigger pile of his problems. And while it is unfortunate that this means most of these issues won't actually get resolved, but rather that the show will end with Steven learning he needs to start working through all of them as a whole, it is rather true to life. We don't always get closure on our issues. Sometimes bad things simply happen, and we have to add them to the list of ways that life is unfair, and continue to move on. That is my list of the top 10 Steven Universe Future episodes. I do hope you liked it, and feel free to tell me how horrible my opinions are in the comments down below. I'll be responding as much as I can with my personal account, and I'll see you next time.